Hey everyone, it's Keith McGinnis here with KCDC Designs out of Eagle, Nebraska. And I've got this beautiful countertop that is calling that a fantasy brown. And I'm going to show you how I did it. So stay tuned. So using 3/4 inch MDF and of course have a drop edge on it. What I'm doing right now is I'm fogging the edges. I always fog the edges of my countertops as well as fogging the top surface. And the edges especially just because that's where the epoxy is going to be thinnest as it rolls over. So I'm getting the edges fogged. I apologize. I did not get a video of when I poured the colors out, but the colors I'm using are white metallic, pearl metallic, and also pearl gold. And so what I'm doing now, I got my colors poured out, and I pour them out very randomly. I don't pour them out in long, striated, candy cane stripe fashion. I have it poured out random. Some areas heavy, some areas a little bit lighter. And now what I'm doing is I'm just getting that melded in, and I'm making sure I get my edges covered real well. That way, as everything starts to flow over the edges, then it's going to flow over very evenly. So then once I get all of my colors melded, then I'm going to torch out the bubbles, and then I'm going to start adding some color. And there's a couple different ways of doing this. The spray paints that I'm going to be using is Khaki, Chestnut, Smoke Gray, Dark Taupe, Hammered Gray, and Charcoal Gray. And I have a whiteboard that I draw out a picture of the countertop, and I have a direction of the flow that I want to go, and that kind of helps me to stay on track. And so that's what I'm doing here is I'm starting to get the colors laid down in the flow that I want them, and I'm just kind of putting on each color at a time. I'm not necessarily layering them very heavy. I'm just getting those colors on there, so when I go to kind of run those colors into the epoxy, then they're all going to kind of meld together. And so what I'm going to be doing here is once I get all of the colors laid down, and you have to be a little bit careful. So when you run your stick through there, or if you're going to run a notched bondo spreader through there, keep an eye on not letting that paint dry so you don't drag those paints. And here's a picture of the notched bondo spreaders that I use. A couple different kinds. It just all depends on the design that I'm going after and the look that I'm going after. And you can also use a stir stick to run through there to create those veins. But I'm using the bondo spreader. It makes quick work of it. But now what I'm doing is I am taking my paint stick and I'm going back across that just because it gives it a little bit different look. And I'm also able to pick up a little bit of those colors and kind of move those around into some of the open areas. And so that's what I'm doing now is just I'm trying to get that the look that I'm after before I take the heat gun and start moving that around. Here what I'm doing is I thought that my open space was too bright, so I just took some different spray paints, and you can see how that effect did, but I just took some spray paints and I sprayed it over the top of those open areas just to add a little bit more color to it and make sure everything kind of blended together. And so now we're going to paint with air, and I'm going to take the heat gun, and you can see that I'm going directly over the top of those veins. I'm not necessarily wanting to move those back and forth. I'm just wanting to open those up and give it more of a man-made look. Kind of what you're seeing here, and that's going to be the end result. So that heat gun really does a great job of being able to move those veins around, manipulate those veins a little bit, and kind of get it to where you like it. Just be careful not to stay in the same place for too long. Right there you can see my heat gun hit the resin, and so I'm just going to take my stick and I'm going to run my stick back through there again, and then I'll take the heat gun and soften that up. But really that's really what that heat gun is doing, is softening up those veins and give it more of a man-made look. Now, I didn't know that I was going to be running a vein up the middle. It's one of those things that as I stood back and looked at it, I was going to run just some small veins in some areas, and then I had this brilliant idea of, you know what, how about if I just run a vein right up the middle? So that's exactly what I did, using those same colors of the khaki, chestnut, smoke gray, dark taupe, hammered gray, charcoal gray, and then I did add some black and white to that center vein also. So when I first ran that vein, to me it seemed a little bit thin, so I just started to widen it out a little bit, and then I kind of made some sister veins, if you will, to the left and the right, again, just to try to get to try to tie everything together. And then where that vein meets the sink, I kind of fluted that out. I flared that out a little bit. And my idea was that it was going to flare out towards the sink, and then it was going to do the same thing on the opposite side. So once that undermount sink was installed, it kind of looked like those veins were pouring into the sink. So again, use your heat gun. Don't stay in one area too long. If it gets too hot, move off to another area, and then you can always come back to it. But remember, the more you use your heat gun, the more you make that resin more fluid. And it can also cause that design to become so fluid that it starts running off the edge. So here's where I'm widening up that vein a little bit, and I'm just going to keep working it until I feel that it has a good look to it, that everything kind of flows together and blends together. And so that's really what I'm doing at that point is these are kind of the final touches, if you will, of standing back, taking a look at it, see where it's at, and see what changes you need to make just to kind of make sure everything does tie in together. I did omit in the video where I put the vein on the opposite side just because it's the camera's just not able to pick a lot of that up, but I'm doing basically the exact same thing on the other side. And I know we all have a problem with knowing when to walk away. I really got a kick out of this when I rewatched the video. I'm gonna walk away, right there. I am gonna walk away. It still looks pretty damn cool. I am gonna call that a day. Okay, Keith is walking away. Keith is walking away. All right, so here's the finished product. So let's do a flyover, and now you'll be able to get a closer look. So remember how I ran those veins when I first put down the spray paint of using the bondo spreader and then using the stick. And by using that heat gun and moving those around, it really made it look a lot more authentic. So there's that wider vein that I put on the right to try to match the big one that went down the middle. Remember, there were 6 colors that I added in there, and I did put some copper accents in there as well. I forgot to mention that, but the customer wanted some copper accents. And then that's how that flared out right where that undermount sink is going to be. But again, that heat gun is what's doing all the work. That's why they call it painting with air. So here's the vein I put on the other side. The detail in the vein is really, really cool. It really turned out nice. I added a little bit of black and a little bit of white. Those little bits of contrast can make a really big difference, especially in some of the wider veins. And so overall, I'm really happy with the project. There again are those veins on the right side, and there you can see some of the copper accents. But take a look in some of the empty areas where there is no veining. Remember where I felt that it was too bright, and so I took some of the spray paint and I just fogged over those areas just to try to darken that up a little bit. And I think, in hindsight, I think it was a great idea and a great thing to do because it really added to kind of help blend everything in together. But I'm really happy with the way those veins turned out. Using that technique and doing this fantasy marble is really a very, very cool and looks like a real nice exotic stone. So before we call this a wrap, I will show you what it looks like after I had installed it in the customer's home. And this has the ultimate top coat natural finish, which really, really made those colors pop. You can see the backsplash, and that's how the customers chose the colors for the countertop. And along with the cabinetry, everything just really tied in really, really nicely and just took their kitchen to a whole new level. It really turned out nice. Thanks again, everybody, for watching. And please subscribe to my YouTube channel and ring the bell to be notified of upcoming videos. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you on the next video.